Isn't it so crazy that like we were talking about this? Like when was that the first time we got coffee?
So I was thinking about that. I want to say it was 6 months ago because it was in the summertime. And I remember
Yes.
us being like, this would be better if it's cooler. Like, yeah, I think,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, it was, right? Like, it was like we're in November already. This year has flown. But I remember us sitting outside. And you know what it was? It was like April, May. And
For
we,
sure.
yeah, which I think is 6 months. And we sat outside at AJ's.
Yay. Well, it's so crazy to like see it full circle. I feel like we've been talking about one, like doing an episode, but two, just like the concept of a podcast. And of course, you've been like just killing it with your business. So it's so much fun. I love when
It's
things come together.
so cool to see, like, and I think this is just something in general for anyone who wants to do anything. Like, I think it can seem like such a big mountain to go
Hmm.
after something different or new or learn something. And it's like, in reality, that conversation was only 6 months ago, but like, you're in such a different place. Like, now you actually have a podcast. We're episode 10, right? So you're like 10 episodes in, and there's so much that happens in between now and then that it's like,
Yeah.
I think people are so hesitant to start on things, but it's like, it really wasn't that long. It's not like we're 2 years later and we're like, you finally did it, Caitlin.
Yeah.
Like,
Seriously. Isn't that crazy? It's like, well, and that's my biggest like challenge is I'm such a perfectionist in a lot of ways, recovering perfectionist, I'll say. But like, like you can relate. It's like, why put my voice out there if it's not exactly how I want it to be? And it's like, nope, we just got to rip the Band-Aid, get over it, move on, do it,
100%. 100. And
Yeah.
I heard this the other day, where it's like, the path is from like, I was going to say, I wish I have a whiteboard. It's behind me,
Yeah.
but I'm not going to attempt like whiteboard on a podcast right now. But it's like, hey, the path, whatever that path is, you start here and it goes to here. But a
Yeah.
lot of times, like, so it's like, it's this long and it's long, like, right? And there's going to be challenges, what have you. But a lot of people just don't want to go on the path. So they'll kind of go here and then they go sideways. And then it's like, if you take a piece of string and then you
Hmm.
extend that piece of string out, you've now just tripled the time or quadrupled the
Love
time.
that.
And so it's like, just get through it, even though it's going to be hard. Would you rather do like, 6 months of it being hard and uncomfortable and questioning yourself and doubting yourself? Or would you rather like play it safe? But then we're sitting here 4 years from now and we're like, okay, yay, you finally
Wish
got your
I
podcast. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I saw something the other day on Instagram that was like the scariest place to be next year is where you are now. And I was like, ooh, stab me in the chest.
Yeah.
It's true. And like I feel like well, I would say I would speak for myself, but I feel like we're both in seasons of our life where that's like really relevant, like lots of change, lots of fun, lots of like a little bit of stress about all those things combined. So, it's all happening. It's all happening.
All
Yes.
happening.
I love it. So, we got started kind of fun, but there's a few questions that I love to ask every guest that I bring on. And the first one is, Laura, are you spiritually active?
I'm spiritually active.
Oh, no way. How are you on this podcast? Yeah.
I am.
Yes. I love that. What does being spiritually active mean to you personally?
Yeah, good. So, good question. I think for me, it is having a belief in and a relationship with God. And for me, it's having faith in salvation through Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, we can certainly go into this later, but I grew up in the Catholic religion, which I think everyone objectively can say is like a very structured
Yes.
entity, right? And you think about and you learn like, you got to go to church every week and there's all these rules. I think that's what a lot of people associate with it. And so I think like as a like teenager, college, right? Like I just was like, that's not resonating because I'm going to a tailgate and I'm not thinking about going to church the next day.
100%. Yeah.
Right. And so I kind of was like, okay, I guess like I'm not in my faith right now. But like as I've gotten older and evolved, and if you want to call it mature, what have you. And honestly, I think I've worked on my relationship with God. It's realizing that like, hey, you can go to church every week like that, and I do know that serves me, that makes me feel good when I do that, but it doesn't, it's not we're not perfect, and we're not meant to be perfect. And so
Yeah.
like having just spiritual moments and like connections throughout your day, and like nothing
Mm-hmm.
formal, you don't have to do the sign of the cross and bow your head and say a prayer. Like I can be in a work meeting starting to whatever, get nervous, or be at a doctor's appointment like getting nervous about something, and just be like, hey God, can you help me, I'm freaking out. And
Yeah.
like that's faith, right? So that's, I don't know if I answered your question, but I would say that's how I think about it today.
No, you did. I love that. And something that you called out is like it's work. Like I often think too there's a misconception because we both went to Catholic school growing up, which we will unpack that for sure.
Yeah.
But just like the idea that when you believe in a religion specifically, it's almost like the path is mapped for you, and
Yep.
then if you just follow it, you're fine. And honestly, I think a lot of people maybe that is the reality or the realization of what their faith is, which is totally good. Like if the structure works for you, awesome. I'm going to go to church every Sunday. But like also if it's not, and you're like, I'm going to skip this week because actually a connection through like going on a hike with nature and saying a prayer
Yeah.
while I'm doing that resonates more. Like I just love that point that even within that like kind of realm of I don't want to say structure again, but like it's more of an organization, right? Where with shared tenants and
Yeah.
pillars, like you still have to put in the work and like find what works for you because
Yes.
otherwise why would you believe in it if it's not working for you, you know?
Exactly. And I think I fell into like all or nothing thinking, which is like
Oh yeah.
what like happens to, and I quite frankly think why a lot of people, they get turned away from religion, which is then like, hey, that's not the point. Like, and I think at least for me in my experience with the Catholic Church, it's got like everything evolved, right? And at the end of the day, you have to realize like there are humans that are leading any type of organized religion or what have you. It's not God leading, they're working through God, and you could, but like you get what I'm saying, like
Right.
they're evolved too. And so something I've appreciated is like there is more flexibility. I remember like yeah, it's just growing up was very structured, which I actually loved, and I can explain why. But
Yeah.
again, it didn't fit I couldn't figure out how reconcile how to be faithful, like have faith, not be faithful. That's not going to land well.
We know
Um,
what you mean. We know what
you
you
know what I mean?
mean.
How to have faith while growing and learning and making mistakes as an individual. And now I see like those things happen together. It's not
Yeah.
one or the other.
Right. And it's almost like too why like you won't have faith, you won't have values or beliefs even if you want to broaden that. If you don't go through those like dark
Yes.
nights of the soul, those shadow moments, those like cringy like oh god, like that happened or I did that and like
Mhm.
that actually makes things really a lot stronger. But you certainly have to start with that base for sure.
Totally.
Yeah. Hallelujah. I love that. So, thinking about it, it sounds like you do really value the structure. Tell us a little bit more about maybe why, and in addition to your faith, or as a part of that practice for you, like what are some of the ways that you deeply connect in that sense?
Totally. So, for me growing up, like I had a lot of chaos in my childhood.
Mm-hmm.
Um, And like I say that because, I was an only child. My parents got divorced when I was really young.
Yep.
And, my mom did a fabulous job of trying making sure I had everything I needed. And she was
Yeah.
a school teacher. She just like very nurturing, very present parent, all those good things. The reality is, and my dad and I had, I would say, like a very close relationship, but he struggled with mental health and with addiction. And
Mm-hmm.
that is really challenging as a child. Like anytime anyone has a parent that's an
For
addict,
sure.
very difficult. It's a lot of chaos. And then I think just being an only child, it's not like you have a sibling there to be like, yo, this
Oh,
is a shit show. You know what I mean?
yeah.
But I share that because church was really a place I found peace, and I think the ritual around it as well was really good for me, and the
Yeah.
structure was critical because I didn't have that in other areas of my life. And so I just have the best memories growing up where like we'd get up, we'd go to church with my mom's, my Nana and Nunu, her parents. We would,
Cute.
I
Nana
know,
Nunu.
they're the best. Like my Nunu is still with us. He's 97 and killing it.
Wow.
He's
Go
literally,
Nunu.
he's totally killing it. He's like still playing bridge. He was ahead of the cold plunge. He used to take a swimming, like they used to live in Michigan. He used to go swimming in the pool in the middle of winter. Like he was doing that in 1970. So anyway,
Okay, no joke. That's probably honestly why his health is great. Like
totally.
there's so much science. Well,
We'll get
we
there.
won't go down
Sorry.
that road. No.
That being said, we'd go and then we'd go get donuts and coffee after. And then we
Yeah.
would go back and then go back to their house and have a big Sunday dinner. And there was so much peace and it just set up the week for me.
Yeah.
And I just felt like I had something bigger than what was going on in life or whatever was difficult there. It really helped me. I also had some of my best friends through church. So that, and as I've gotten older, I've found that I'm again starting to dip a toe back into that because I think almost something happened for me where this is going to sound weird, but like living in Scottsdale, it's a pretty fast paced area life. Like you're
Yeah.
in like coming straight out of college. Like we went to essentially a party school. Like we didn't do all that, but like, it's just a different, like religion is not
Yeah.
top of mind when you're doing that. Right. And when we, like graduated, it's like going to Old Town and like out to restaurants and brunch and everything. And like, I didn't really like listen to my boss. I was like,
Oh,
just
yeah.
I was working all the time and all this stuff. And so that being said, like as I've gotten older, my values have shifted into like now I am like, you know me. I'm like it's Friday night. I would love to stay in. Like I don't want to go out anywhere because there's no one I need to see, no one I need to be with unless it's my group of friends or like my husband or my, our dog, Louie.
We'll talk about him.
And so like as I've been kind of just discovering different like a different way of living, if you want to call it that, different lifestyle.
Oh yeah.
It's starting to I've craved like that community outside of like the traditional community we got from just going out on the weekend, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. It's so funny that you mentioned like something I just like realized as you were talking is we have very similar backgrounds. Like we went to the same high school, we went to the same college, like we work together, So like that aside, what you mentioned around like when you're in college and like those are the things that you're doing when you're there. And even after college, you're still kind of like following that lifestyle of like having a few too many on a Friday night or even like going to like events and like just trying to meet people. And it's so funny. Like it reminds me of this book I read called The Defining Decade, all about like how your 20s oftentimes were like, oh, you're young, we can throw them away and just have fun.
Yeah.
But it's so crazy how those inklings of like, I want to stay home or I want to relax or I want to listen to my body are often there, even from like a young age, like in childhood, but we constantly resist because we're created or we're a structure or a expectation of us is created by others. Yeah. And so then like we continue to go along with it. And then you have this moment, like, I mean, I've been having them right and left this year, and I'm sure you've had tons too, where it's like, actually, no. And then that's where you get to make like the choices to step into the practices that actually bring you fulfillment, joy, like going to church, if that's a ritual for you, or like staying home on a Friday night and reading a book or watching the dumbest show on Netflix, like it's so crazy how that transition happens, but to almost everybody or a lot of people, but it happens at completely different rates. You know what I mean? And so that's when I'm like, oh, that's where we find our kindred spirits and our peace and our friendships and all that stuff. That was a tangent, but like, I just had to call that out.
I love it. And I'm so glad you extrapolated that because that is so spot on. I'd never articulated it like that, but like we almost fall to, if you want to call it that, the expectations that others, at least society, has of us. And so going back to the first thing you asked, which I don't think I ever answered, was like, what practices do you do that help you be spiritual. Well, there's a couple things like, and it's gonna sound silly, but like for me, it is like, stay with me here, but like it's getting enough sleep. Like I am an anxious, I have anxiety. Like I know that I'm not, so it's like that immediately just gives me a center. And then now that I'm starting to prioritize sleep, whereas before I would stay up and like do work or like try to
Mm-hmm.
be productive at the, and I didn't realize
Oh.
it at the time, 'cause, right? It's like hustle culture, like we're a burn the candle at both and yeah, boo. And so I, prioritizing that. Number two is, and I'm like figuring this out, is like honestly watching my alcohol intake. Like we were talking about this before we hopped on.
Totally.
And it's not like, girl, I love an espresso martini. I love margaritas, like going to town there. But what I don't love, and I think a lot of people start to figure this out probably just as you get older, because your body's like, help. I the next day, like I'm hungover, even if I have one drink. It's whatever. My body doesn't like. And so to me, again, I felt this pressure of like, well, society, like I should be
Oh.
like, I'm not having fun. Not if I'm like getting trashed, but I'm not having fun if I'm not having going out for wine with the girlies, or I'm not doing brunch. Like I'm not being social, and I'm not. But actually, for me, by doing other things, I forge deeper connections with people. So like,
Uh-huh.
everyone talks about like sober curious. Like I'm 100% not giving up my margaritas, but like for me, what I have found is like I understand when I lean into that and when I lean out, and I'm unapologetic about it when I'm like, hey, it's not the time for me right now.
I love that word, unapologetic. I think I shared with you when we got lunch a couple of weeks ago. Like I was sober for honestly almost like 6 or 7 months
Yeah.
and like no alcohol. And granted, like, was I hoping it would totally transform my life? Yes. Yes, I was. Did it? No.
No.
From the sense that, like, oh, I loved getting up on weekends and not being hungover, or like not regretting spending too much money the night before, or like, talk. You never know. Like sometimes if you don't remember things, like that happens to you, it's scary. Yeah, it just adds to that like weight on your chest of like, holy shit, like there were so many bad choices, and then the guilt just continues, even if the choices weren't that bad. Um,
Yes.
but and like lately I've even been toying with it again. I was literally just having a conversation. My friends are like amazing. They're like, we are such like theme party people. We always want to plan stuff for each other. It's so like it's such a great environment and atmosphere of celebration when we come together. And I was like sitting there and they were like, what do you want to do? And I'm like, honestly, like I think I want to drive up to Sedona for the day. But then I ordered this really cute like top, and I would like love to be seen in it with like a cute drink in my hand. So it's just like such a, like it's
Tug
you're
and a pull.
yeah, and I think honestly like your point around like the expectation is like that we are drinking, and when you're unapologetic about not, like people are going to feel a certain type of way. Often that's a reflection of how their relationship with alcohol, like you name it, works. But it's just so funny because it's like at the end of the day, like you can be both and do both and have an espresso martini and like maybe hate yourself for a sec the next day and be like, no, it was worth it. I enjoyed it. But it's like teeter tottering and finding that balance is so freaking hard when it's an expectation of our culture to go out and do those things until the cows come home. It's exhausting to keep up with.
And I find actually the times where I'm like, no, like I've planned my weekend around that, like it's a big event or something that I'm excited about. Like I'm like,
Same.
yeah, let's do this. I'm like, that's where I will be very intentional to say, I'm not going to feel bad about this. I'm actually not going to plan to be productive the next day. I'm actually going to clear my schedule and
Yep.
and that's okay. Like it's planned in the schedule. You know what I mean? Like, and so all that to be said, for me, where I have found a lot of spiritual connection is actually through my creative process, which sounds
Yes.
like, I'm like, oh, this sounds cliche, but it's very true.
Mm-hmm.
I started painting. I've always been creative, right? Like I've
Yeah.
always like growing up as a little kid, I was always like, I want to have a card store. Like when I saw papyrus for the first time, I remember I was like, I don't know, 10. And I was like,
We're
damn
the
it.
same person.
That's my idea, but I was also like, this is cool because it means there's a market for it, right?
Oh, yeah.
but I always had been creative, but then I always followed the same, like, just kind of the dry black and white, like, trajectory of, like, I'm going to go get a finance degree and da 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 da. And so, again, being in college and working, like, I was in a different phase in life. It's not like I would, like, sit at home and, like,
Mm-hmm.
paint or anything, because I didn't really consider myself to be, like, capable of doing so. I just
Yeah.
figured, like, oh, I was, like, above average as a kid. Like, yeah, I could color in the lines, but, like, whatever, who isn't? But I realized, like, it actually brings me so much joy, and it's
Mm-hmm.
a very spiritual experience, because I have to turn off the conceptual part of my brain that overanalyzes, that's auditing everything I'm doing, that's thinking, quite frankly, and go into, like,
Mm.
my feeling part. And that has been very healing, and that has been very eye-opening for me.
Yeah. That's beautiful. And I love the like your definition of creativity because for some people maybe it is like thinking and analyzing.
Yes,
Um and for you maybe like color or like even just being able to like part of the process is setting up your space and like feeling really cozy with like a candle lit and a coffee or a glass of wine or
yeah.
whatever you prefer, you know? Like I absolutely love that.
Thanks, girl. Yeah,
It's
no,
so much fun.
I'm curious for you too, like, what can I ask you a
Yeah.
question, or
Oh, yeah. Ask me right back, girl. I'm gonna answer them
I
all.
would love to know, like, where do you find spirituality for yourself?
Oh gosh. All sorts of places. I think lately, most of all, like right, like I do yoga. Most people think that's like I teach yoga. Like that is a very spiritual practice for me. There's nothing better than like moving your body. I won't even say in yoga and like getting that like zone in where you're like, I am so locked into this moment right now. It's amazing. Like you get that I get that on hikes sometimes too, where I'm like, nothing can stop me. Like I am here. I am fully present. So like movement for sure. And I also think lately, especially, tarot. And yeah, oh my gosh. I taught a tarot themed restorative class the other night. It was amazing. Like people are like, I've never touched these cards before. Can you tell me what these mean? Obviously, like I don't know everything. It's a science and an art, right? There's definitely meaning behind cards like that. But also at the same time, there's a million different decks out in the world where artists have taken their interpretation. You should do a tarot card deck. Oh my God, I would literally die. Um, that have interpreted like the key themes around it, and I think really what that is, it's just a mirror to your subconscious. It's an opportunity for you to be like, I needed to face this, like it's been on my heart or running through my mind, or like I wasn't even thinking about this is something I'll keep in mind as I move through my day, week, whatever, whenever you do your spreads. The thing that has been the most connective for me lately though is angel numbers. And I know very little, but you would probably be like, what's wrong with this girl? Not you, but someone. If you looked at my camera roll, like I take pictures, it's bad. It's bad. Like I am driving 85 on the freeway and I'm like snapping pics of license plates. It's I know it gives me anxiety too. I have a strategy now. I literally like plant it, zoom, to click it, and then I'm like, okay, if I didn't get it, it's fine. I saw it. But like even this morning, right? Like I was leaving my yoga class to come home and start working. And I drive past this big truck, and on the back, the truck number is 555 and the license plate has an 888 in it. And so it's such a cool like relationship that all of these numbers and like you can't make this shit up. Like there are too many resources out there that are like, this is what the number 8 really like signifies in numerology and stuff. But 555 and 888, 555 is like change. So lots of universal changes coming. I have seen that everywhere. And I'm like, okay, universe, like I must be ready to receive it. But like, what does that change mean? Like it could be I changed my hair color to blue or I quit my job. Like we're really on different spectrums here. So that and then 888 is like abundance. and kind of
Oh,
that concept of like connection and universality and universality. Is that even a word? I don't know.
we'll
But
take.
just, yeah, just finding abundance, and having that mindset of like you're guided and supported, and rewarded is not the right word I would use, but like when I think of that, I think of financial compensation and abundance, right? Like that's
Yep.
where I project a lot of energy around feeling insecure about. Like I make decent money.
Yep.
I
Yeah.
save properly. We work in
Yeah.
finance. Like it all makes sense. But still there's that like scarcity mindset that I constantly am working on. And so like those two numbers together signify to me like if you make a change, you will indeed still be supported in that way. And so just seeing like all the crazy combinations. The other day I was talking to I called my mom while I was in the car, and I was like, I'm like feeling my grandpa's presence because he
Oh,
passed kind of suddenly a couple of years ago. But quite honestly, it was because he was heartbroken when my grandma passed. I mean, he never fully recovered. And he wouldn't say that verbally, but you could just so you could understand it, if you knew. And he passed away. And at his celebration of life, at the very end, we played "Take It Easy" by the Eagles. And so I was listening to a different song, and I sent it to my mom and I said, "This reminds me of Grandpa." He's from Connecticut. And so when we would always go visit him, we'd go to New York City for a day or two. Like he was all about theater and Broadway and just like had worked there for so many years. And this song was about like drivers, like men driving you places. And he hired the wackiest people to like the coolest people to pick us up from the airports whenever we'd visit. And my mom was like, "Oh my God, like that does resonate." Skip to the next song. It's on shuffle. "Take It Easy" comes on. I look
okay.
over. I know. I could cry about it. I
No.
look over at a license plate and it's 333. And then I saw another one like 2 minutes later and it was 444. And 333 is like guidance. Your spirit guides, your ancestral mentors are there with you.
Oh my
They
God.
always are, but that's like a beautiful confirmation for me that I've been seeing a lot. I'm like, my grandpa is here. He's making an entrance because it's been a delayed, like I see my grandma and everything. It's freaking scary. But my grandpa, I'm like, when I know you're going to be important to me, and I've had that confirmed by someone who's done a reading for me. I just don't know how. And so I'm starting to feel like as I'm moving through these weird seasons of my life that he is, hey, like I'm just making myself known. And then 444 is like protection or guidance,
Mhm.
as you kind of make those movements. And so I called my mom. I was like, I'm about to lose my shit, because for me, and that might not feel real for anybody else, but for me, it is so real, and resonates so much that's like whenever I see it, I have to capture it because I'm just like, when I have a shit day, I need to go back and look like
And remember, there's
I
more.
exactly,
That's
exactly.
great.
So I hope
I
I answered your question.
Yeah, no, I love that, and thank you for sharing that. It's like I've had a similar thing with um like if you want to call it signs or what have you, like
Oh, signs are big for sure.
yeah, and after like um I don't know if we're going into this now, but I'll just like my dad passed away
Yes.
after I moved up to Phoenix about a year after and like there have definitely been times where I've seen him come through and I do I've always I think where the question is like I'm like, is it him, is it God? I'm confused, and like to
Yeah.
me I'm like I truly think it for me I know it to be God. We're like allowing my dad to show up for me.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
so this was I'll give you a tangible where it's like you can't explain this away.
No, I already have
So
shivers.
totally. The last gift my dad gave me before he passed was tickets to the weekend concert. I loved the weekend. And so
Uh-huh.
he like bought them for me and like my roommate Caitlin, other roommate, different
Not
Caitlin, but
me.
yeah. And so we go to it and they were good seats. Like they're, nothing crazy, but they were good seats. And so we're walking up to the stadium. It's a Talking Stick in downtown Phoenix. And when they scan your barcode and it'll be like you'll go through and you're like, yes, they scan our barcode and it makes like an X, like red flashes on the thing. And I'm like, I just had this feeling of like, I feel like dad's here right now. And so
Yeah.
for anyone who, like for my dad, he was a bigger than life personality. He liked to do things big. He was known for like, especially on my birthdays or things like that. Like he would just go
Oh,
over the top with like things like just very thoughtful and like, he would go and get the extra, spend money on the extra ticket, like the better seats or whatever it was,
yeah.
and
Make it special.
make it special, like go out with a bang. And so they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna need you to go to the ticket counter. And I'm kind of like, all right. And then I'm just like, Caitlin, did you bring a razor blade in your purse? Like, what are we like not making it through this process easily?
Yeah.
So they're like, hey, we actually are gonna be filming this concert, and they're setting up the camera where your two seats are, so we have to move you. And I just feel, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so dad doing this to be extra right now.
Stop.
And they move us to these incredible seats. Like I could not have asked for a better seat. It was truly like a spiritual experience. Music I think is spiritual in and of
Oh
itself,
my
but
God.
the view we had, like we were right there with the weekend. And he, like, sometimes artists will face one way more, or it's like he was performing for us the whole time. Like it was
Yeah.
just insane. And it's like, what are the odds that out of that entire stadium, like I'm getting chills, that our two seats are where they had to put the camera? It just,
I love that.
things like that and have happened. And it's like, you know what, like I can't, that to me also gives me faith there's more after life. And our loved ones are with us, God is with us, and we will
Always.
we
Yeah.
will see them again in whatever form that is.
Yeah. Have I told you about the book Signs? I think we talked about it once.
We talked about it briefly, but I have not, like, I haven't read it or gotten into it. I feel like I need
Okay.
to now.
I
Yeah.
So this is there's all sorts of stories, literally every chapter in this book, and I'll put it in our show notes. This
Please
is like my top 3 book I've ever read. Fucking
Okay.
cry, laugh, like everything in between. But basically, each chapter is about a different person losing a loved one, young, old, like far off in the future, or people that are all sorts of connections. Like there's a chapter about a woman who cannot get pregnant. She's like, it's not happening. And then she has a reading done and 2 baby souls like show themselves to her and she gets pregnant with twins. It's crazy.
No way. Oh my
Yeah.
God.
And I've had a similar experience with breath work, where I've met like my future son. It's crazy. Yeah, dude. I can tell that story. This podcast is about you, though.
I'm like, I love this though. This is
Yeah,
amazing.
I know. And it's funny, actually, that happened when I was up in Sedona. And like, there's all sorts of mediums and
Yeah.
psychics and like all that kind of new agey fun stuff, and maybe even a little too touristy when you
Sure.
go to places like Sedona or like Salem or whatever. But we met and went to this angel reading, and she confirmed like who my guardian angel is, what his name is. Like I felt his physical presence like in the room.
Oh my gosh.
And like for me, kind of going back to like, hey, you're more faith-based, I am not, but yet we are so similar as people.
Yeah.
And we can believe in those things in the same ways, but also different. Do you know what I mean? So like for
Totally.
me, like angels are huge. Like I know they're there. They're always there. I have faith in God. I know that everybody is up there, like hanging
Yeah.
out, waiting for me when my day comes.
Yeah.
But I also feel like they're supporting and guiding along the journey that I'm on now.
Yeah.
And I feel like that narrative is not always like we think that's the new age stuff, but like
Yeah.
actually if you think about faith, religion, no matter what it is, like that also is very much recorded and written down that like we are indeed guided. I think people just have a little bit more of like an aversion sometimes when it's not something that they're familiar with, whether it be like more of that structure or more of that kind of woo-woo stuff.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
No, I think, and it's funny because I like for me where I have a like what I have a calling to do is to get closer to the Bible, like get closer to the Word of God. Like
Yeah.
in Catholicism, even though everything's based, you're doing readings from the Bible. I think unlike Christian, my at least my friends that are Christian who like they know verses, they know the book of God, and I don't. Like I've made it
Right.
through Genesis, and that's about it. Like, and it's multiple effort, like multiple times I've tried, and I'm like on Genesis, I just start to like fade out. And so, but for me, what I started realizing, like the, and like I'm probably getting this wrong, and but I'm learning is in the Bible they talk about the significance of numbers and revelations.
Yep.
And so I remember like there was a time where I kept seeing triple sixes, and I was like,
Oh,
oh my
yeah.
gosh, because everyone says that's the devil number or what.
Oh, some of my friends are like, oh, that's bad. I'm like, actually, it's not.
I literally text my friend who she's very well versed in the Bible, and we've done some studies together, whatever. I'm like, hey, I'm like actually worried I'm gonna get hit by a bus in the next 2 seconds. So can we like help me unpack this? And it was like, I think that people have a lot of fear when it comes to religion or like
Hmm.
other people's beliefs because they don't fully know the what is the word and what is like, and I think that's where a lot of
Mm.
intolerance comes from, where it's actually people are just scared of like
Yeah.
doing making sure they do the right thing. And so it's just been a reflective point for me, because I think too, like growing up Catholic, it was like it's this way and it's this
Or
way only
not.
way. Like I remember being told like I'm trying to think of an example. Well, it's like okay, if you have um like if you commit suicide, the church does not believe that you go to heaven. And I my dad passed from suicide, and so that
Yeah.
was I remember grappling with that. And now
Oh,
I'm at a point
gosh.
where I'm like, yeah, it's like okay, that's great. On top of everything else, now I'm like, pops is down below, perfect. And so, but then I like, as I shared, like I'm at that concert, or there have been other instances like that where I'm like, that's God telling me like
Mm.
he's okay. Like my dad's up there, and like so. Anyways, I just went on a tangent. We can cut this whole thing, but
Oh,
I
no, no.
I just think that what you're saying is we're all just trying to figure out, find meaning, find faith, find connection
Yes.
to God in a way that is bigger than ourselves. And I think society gets caught up in saying that's right, that's wrong.
Yeah.
And it's like, mate, like I do believe there is a right and a wrong, but I am not God, and that's why I lean on Him to help guide me. And we're all, and
Oh,
it's
that's
it's everyone,
beautiful.
it's everyone's journey. And so, yeah, I just think, like, who am I to
Yeah,
judge
determine that.
someone's journey or tell someone that, like, I can
Yeah.
just share what I know to be true and what's, worked for me.
Yeah. And you're even making me reflect, I never really connected with the Bible, right? Or like but it's funny because when you talk about intolerance or institutionalization of religion in general, I think a lot of people have an aversion to that, right? Because they're like structure, no. But really, actually, as humans, like our brains literally want the structure. It's just not the structure that they necessarily agree with, right? And that's fine. Like, do you boo boo?
Yep.
Like find what resonates.
Yep.
Um, but it's just so interesting because I think as a collective, we really start to weaponize those things against us. So,
That's right.
like
Yeah.
when like frankly, like when some people are super religious, like I kind of get a little like triggered because I know the structure that didn't work for me.
Mhm.
And some people have used it against me in
It's
that
been a
way.
weapon.
Yeah, of
Right.
like from drinking to like
Yep.
having sex before you're married, like
Right.
that makes you this and you have to do this to be quote unquote
Good.
saved.
Yep.
But also at the same time, like some of the intolerance though, is also from the people outside looking in. And I don't want to say there's a level of envy around a specific faith or belief.
Yep.
But when I think about that feeling of like something's missing, it's because they don't have that deeper
That's
connection
right. Oh my gosh.
with them, their higher self, or capital God, lowercase God, like whatever, you know? And I think, Christianity particularly gets a really bad rep because as we see it today, it's a lot of very conservative, demanding beliefs of how
Yep.
you can and can't live your life.
Yep.
And, we both come from a Catholic background. And so that's like, they always say, like, those crazy Catholics, they're
Totally
just,
nuts.
and it's
But
not true. It's not true. And so we have to remember to give it, like, that can certainly be true in some perspectives, right? Like that archetypical person can certainly embody itself and be a reality, but also like, it's not. We have to give people the opportunity to share why they are so ingrained in a faith, a religion, a belief. Like you could ask me about tarot for days and I could tell you over and over again why I care about it.
yeah,
And you don't have to agree,
totally. And
but
that's
it's
okay.
right. It's just about setting that like respect mutually between types of people that and I sound honestly a little tone deaf because there's so much conflict going on in the world between groups that have
Yep.
very deep roots when it
Yep.
comes to faith. And really I know nothing. I've only scratched the surface there. So speaking from my perspective, like I really do believe there's a way that we can coexist and love one another, because at the end of the day, we all as humans, I think, are really ingrained with a lot of the same values. They
Yep.
just express themselves in completely different ways.
Beautifully said, Caitlin. And
Thank you.
yeah, that was beautiful. And like what I would say is I'm like, hey, it is God. It is God. Like capital G, God.
Yeah.
I that is you know what I. But where we, to your point, where we, I think, lose people, and it's a disservice, is this. Oh well, I can't hear about what you're doing. I can't engage in that, or you live a completely different lifestyle. I don't want to talk. And God and Jesus is love. Like he
Yeah.
so right? So like I love you, you love me, and it's like when you push people away like that again, I think to your point, I think comes from fear, like when it's like, and there's people in like we're
Right.
not talking about the outliers, like we're not calling it like like we're not
Yeah.
no, we're talking about
No,
like
agreed.
you know um but like for example, this is really it's just like interesting. This is a very controversial figure, but I mean what I'll bring like Candace Owens, very right wing, very and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
there are like I will tell you, like I've heard things from her and I'm like, I don't agree with that, I don't align with
That's
that.
out of pocket.
Is
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
pocket 100%? But that doesn't mean I'm throwing out the baby with the bathwater. She did an interview the other day, which I absolutely listened to because this is a fascinating concept. On a different pod, she was being interviewed on a different podcast, and I'm totally forgetting what it's called. Bottom line, she sat down with a ton of sex workers.
Mm.
Definitely,
Doesn't
not
fit the archetype that
doesn't
people.
fit the
Yeah. Yep.
archetype.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And she had a very respectful conversation, so much so that one of the workers wanted to reach out to her and was like, hey, I'd actually like to have a further conversation with you, like on your podcast. And so,
Yeah.
this is like a very extreme example because Candace Owens is super right wing, extremely extreme. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't, so I think a lot of her rhetoric is damaging. But I think that, and that's just my opinion. You can cut this if this is like going to cause an
No,
issue.
you're good. No, don't. Yeah, keep going, girl.
I think, but then she sit down and had a respectful conversation with someone and she was
Yeah.
like, hey, at the end of it, she was like, I I'm praying for you. Like, I don't agree with the life choice you've made. I don't think it's good for you. It goes against the Bible, but I want to see you thrive. And because I want to see you thrive, like, I want to see you come to God and change your life
Mm-hmm.
instead of you're sinning. Don't talk to me. Like, you need
Mm-hmm.
to you need to change. Like there's so much difference, I think, in that, and that's where people like get it wrong.
Well,
Like,
yeah. And even like I'm sure like our listeners, even I am like I feel resistance towards even like hearing someone's name like that, right? Because I'm like,
totally.
like
You're like,
I know I've yeah, I've seen those tidbits, right? From and like I'm like, well, you know,
I'm done with it.
I'm
Yeah.
right or you know, even that example, it's like those people probably think like well, I'm living my life in what version makes me feel righteous or well or whatever like word you want to put there. But what I love is that like there was just energy around the conversation to like let it be known because there's so much right now that's just like it's public clickbait. Like we grab
Yes.
at everything to make a judgment. And like I said, humans love structure. Judgment, put it in a file, it's going to stay there forever. I can lick my fingers, go through the file cabinet, and be like, I remember her, and I don't like any of that stuff that she's putting out there, or
Yes.
vice versa. But either way, that can become problematic. And so it's almost like when you were speaking, I was thinking about like I don't love the word triggered, but there's like a
Same.
way that we need to safely almost help ourselves be uncomfortable and a little triggered so that we can better understand people past the labels. Like when I think of like it's so funny that we're talking because we are the same person. Like we are
Yeah.
like colorful gel pens and cozy socks and wiener dogs and like, you know, but it's like when I rejected a lot of what you like feel is sacred to your heart because I had an understanding of it at that point in my life. But I believe like that guided me towards my faith, quote unquote, in a very roundabout way that sounds the same. It just looks different. Like when you were speaking about like God and Jesus or love, like we always hear about like Christ consciousness not having to do with Christianity, right? And like that feeling of putting your heart forward in everything you do. And I'm a big believer that like my energy source that I relate to is like the universe. And so whatever you label it or whatever you call it, like I believe that we are constantly surrounded by love, fortune, fulfillment, joy, but we have to reach for it and find it. And like, it's not fair to tell someone else that their way of doing that is wrong because without us like kind of going through that journey of maybe thinking it's wrong for us, you're going to find another way to relate. Um Even if the semantics, the language is different, like I picture this big beautiful like lattice of just stars in the sky and it's like all the people I've ever known that have moved on and all my ancestors from years ago and like the woo woo stuff, but either way you're encapsulated in this like heaven on earth honestly is what I would put it as, right? Like we are the universe living out our own lives. We are God living out our own lives. Like that's why we come here, you know, is to do that and to be an expression of that source. And I don't know really where I was going with that, but you just had me like my brain was like, "Woo, the cogs are swirling, gotta go." You know,
I think like
trains leaving the station.
it's fun. No, I feel like between the two of us, like we're very unscripted. Like we're like, oh, so
Squirrel.
you may have to take this podcast, splice it, and like move sections. And, but I think
No, I
no,
love the organicness of it.
me
It's
too.
fun.
I think that no, like I love, I really appreciate this, and I love like you just hit the nail on the head. And I think we have to
333.
be
Spooky.
stop.
Hee.
Um, yeah, I don't even know. That was just really, I agree, and that we're just. Oh, I know what I wanted to say. With your point of, I just want to underscore it because I think it's important. I don't like the word trigger, and I think we live in a society where we're like trigger
Mm,
warning, trigger warning. Well, let me tell you something. Like I have OCD. I have for Oh,
Something just fell in my room.
help.
I don't know what though. We're good.
Breaking and entering. We'll keep it moving.
We're all good. So sorry.
No, but like we live in a world of like trigger this, trigger that. And actually, like I have OCD. I was diagnosed with it when I was in middle school, and it's something I've been open about like recently.
Hmm.
And like it's under, good control. I manage it well. But one of the things with OCD, part of the treatment, it's called exposure therapy. And
Mm,
so, like, whatever the fear is, let's say it's I'm worried I'm going if I don't like some people have I didn't have this like this. I'm very thankful for that, but some people have to open and close the door 4 times before they can walk through it
yep.
because then something bad will happen. So exposure therapy is actually you're going to go face that fear and you're going to open and close that door 4 times. You don't always sometimes you don't work. Sometimes it's just open and close it once, see what happens for 15 seconds and then you do the compulsion or whatever. Like it takes
Right.
time. But that's actually how you move through things. And I think the same as I find the same thing to be true just in a society. Like if we're getting triggered, and I get triggered too, like I do,
Oh yeah.
that is a great indicator to pause and say, step back and say, why? Just like you just did. And kind of instead of just shutting it out, actually leaning into it and moving through it and unpacking that. Because I do
Yeah.
think that triggered energy, I think it's unhealthy for us. And the more we move through it, the more
Oh
you're gonna
yeah.
have peace.
Oh, and when you think about like energetics and healing and stuff, I mean, we store so much trauma, emotion in our body physically
Yes.
that, and honestly, when people are triggered, it's either you go off about it or you hold on to it.
Yep.
I really have found that like when I interact with people who feel that like immediate sense of like, oh my gosh, something's like really coming up for me, that those are the two ways that it's handled. And something you just said, like, I wonder if we start to help people reframe the word trigger to more of a like a sense of resistance, because I
Well,
think when you resist something, it's more of a an idea of like hesitation, but I
yeah.
might take a step, or
Yeah.
like we're adding a little bit more. Like I even think of like resistance training physically, right? Like
Right.
you're adding more to grow stronger or to like get bigger, get
Yeah.
taller in
Those
a
games.
non-physical sense. Yeah, like just taking away, like trigger sounds like a triggering word.
Oh, I love,
Whereas
yes.
like it
Yeah.
holds like an energy. Whereas
Yeah.
resistance is like,
I'm like feeling it in my chest right now. Like,
no, same. I'm like, let's stop talking about
yeah.
it. But like the resistance piece is like, it's weighing on my heart. I have a
Yeah.
minute to like respond versus react and kind of process
Hmm.
before. And I'm a big believer, like heal it to like feel it to heal it. Like if emotions come up, express them, but also like do so in a way that's productive and
Productive.
constructive, not just like, let me go
Up
yell
on
at
my Facebook
someone
post.
or hole myself up for 3 days, like it's tough. It's a hard medium to strike.
You need to make feel it to heal it merch like that. I love
Hashtag.
that so
I would
much.
love to do that. My
I
shit
think
says
that
emotional today.
we actually need to get some stickers going. Let's let's talk to our friends that can help us with that. I think that
Okay.
that would actually be really, really good.
Okay, I love this. You're inspiring so many ideas.
Like,
Woo. um I love it. So we've kind of been all over the map. If you don't mind, I'd love to come back to your understanding of grief. I think that's really important and something that we don't talk about a lot. So if you're open to talking about it, I'd love to learn a little bit more about how, you've mentioned your faith is important to you, your creativity and connection to specifically like art and painting. But just in general, like I think when you're in the throes of losing a loved one or experiencing just some sort of loss, it could even be a thing or some sort of concept that you've really had an attachment to. It's really, really hard to kind of pull yourself out of that and move forward. Um, once again, like feel it to heal it. You take the time, you do what you need to do. But I would love to hear like what was that like for you, and what did you do to help yourself hold space for you and heal in that season of your life?
Yeah, no, definitely open to talking about it. So there's so many like, yeah, where do I start? What I will first say is like, there is a cute, what I would call acute grief. I don't know if that's a medical term or whatnot, but like when it just
Yeah.
happens, right? You are I don't remember a lot like of the time right after my dad passed, because you quite literally go, I mean, your brain turns off in certain places to
Yes.
just survive, right? And it's really a haze. And actually,
Mm.
weirdly enough, one of my best friends, her dad passed a week before mine did. It was the weirdest. I mean, it was like
Wow.
wild. Um, and different, different circumstances, but um we both kind of have talked about, I mean, one, that was horrible to go through, have to go through that too, but having someone going through it and that can relate. And I think so whenever are ready, if you can find someone who can truly say, I know what you mean, and me, truly know what you mean, that's
Yeah.
critical. But we both talk and we're like, yeah, man, like I blacked out like for a couple months there. I don't remember. You're going through the motions. And it is the thing my uncle told me that was the best advice ever. It is one day at a time. That is
Yeah.
all you worry about. Fuck everything else. You
Hmm.
focus on, you wake up, and whatever that day, whatever good is for you that day, you do it. And some days that meant I actually was calling out of work. So just, I can't do it. Like other times it was going to work because I wanted the distraction.
Yeah.
Sometimes it was like you go through a little, like I went through a little bit of like a, like a buy things to feel good phase. And I got, a
Totally.
lot of really great handbags during that time. And you know what? It's fine. Like, and her and I, like, I remember, hopefully she won't kill me for saying this, but like she bought like 57 packages of English muffins one week. And we were like, okay, do you feel better? She's like, yeah. We're like, that's great. So like you do what you need to do to
Right.
get through those initial shock and just survive. But the thing that was really critical for me was therapy. I did very intensive therapy. Just the way I lost my dad was very traumatic, on top of
Absolutely.
just the trauma that I had from childhood that I'd never unpacked actually. So I went through, and that's what I would say to anyone. There's no right time to go start therapy. If it takes you 6 months or a year, take 6 months or a year. Like I didn't start for several months afterwards because again, you're
Right.
surviving. Some people go in the week of because they need it. Like, so there is no judgment there. It's whatever feels right for you. But I really do recommend having a professional therapist to work with. And there were times where I was going every single week religiously. I would kind of scale back as time went on. And then sometimes I'd scale up again because you know what?
Right.
As things in life happen, you realize, you get to a point where you're like, all right, I'm managing. And then something happens and you're like, shit, like this set me off in a different way or whatever. So, definitely having that. And the other thing was like my community that surrounded me. Like it was,
Mm.
my family was incredible, very supportive. And I'm really thankful. Like I lived with Caitlin, she's my best friend still to this day. And she was just like I'll get like emotional talking about it. Like she was
Yeah.
just, I mean, she is a true sister to me. And like I do feel God put her in my life for a reason. Like she saw me through the worst. And the thing is that people don't realize with grief is like, you have the immediate, you have the funeral, and you're there for someone, you help. But what people don't talk about, I think we're starting to talk about it more, is like, you know
Yeah.
what? It's 5 months from now when you're in a movie theater and there is some scene there and someone, you know, kills himself in the movie and you weren't expecting it and you have to remove yourself, and that friend
Yeah.
like go leaves with you and goes home and you go and sit on the couch and have ice cream and you talk about it and it's okay, like,
Yeah.
or you start crying in the middle of what's supposed to be a happy moment and they're there for you. And so like having those people that are just non-judgmental, unapologetically
Mm.
there for you at all, unconditionally there for you at all times, like that, I'm just so grateful for having Caitlin. And I'm also grateful for Matt, my husband. He came, talk about a God thing. He came into my life 4 months after my dad passed. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that was my dad and God sending him my way.
Here he
And
is. Yeah.
he's been my rock, and I'm so lucky and thankful to have him. So, again, like it's one, survive it, two, get some professional help to help you through that, because the thing
Yeah.
I tell everyone, if you don't work through it now, it doesn't go away. You may feel better now, but it's gonna pop up 10 years later, whether it's through physical manifestation, through illness, or through an emotional manifestation. It doesn't, that
Mm-hmm.
energy, you have to heal and move through it. You can't just push it down. And then, yeah, community, and like just being very protective of who you surround yourself with.
Yeah. That
And
energy is very tender.
yeah, and I also tell everyone, Option B actually was a fabulous book I read. And
Mm.
they have a great Instagram account for people to follow, even if you haven't lost a loved one. They give a lot
Mm-hmm.
of really good language to help people, because it's like awkward. Like when
Oh,
someone
it's so hard.
no one knows what to say. Like those of us that do have dead dads, we make jokes like you're in the dead dad club. That's really jarring for people when they're not in that dark
Yeah.
sense of humor. So it's like good to have something to like, what do I say? So Option B is great as well.
I love that. Okay, option B, very cool.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I think it's important, to your point, to talk about those things because
Oh yeah.
I have experienced grief in different ways, like losing grandparents and things like that. But I also think it happens to us, and then we shut down.
Mm-hmm.
We You can see it coming, you might not see it coming.
Yep.
Those reminders might pop up, or like that you might see nothing. But regardless, like each of us moves through emotion, through these deep like stages of life and traumatic events with completely different perspectives. And I think it's important to like share what we've grown from and learned from, because it, I don't want this to come out the wrong way, but I'm a big believer, to your point, that like people are put in our life, and like we are guided and supported along these events even when it doesn't feel like it.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah. And like I believe that like my soul chose to come to this earth, and there's no fate involved. Like I make my own path, but the universe presents you, the elusive you, with things. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you can't prevent them or control them.
Mm-hmm.
And whether that's like, some people think it's meant to be, some people don't think.
Yep.
And I don't look at like, right, like your situation is like a lesson you learned, right? But something that like your soul moved through and grew more open from as a
That's good.
result. You
Oh
know what I
yeah.
mean? Like I don't want that to sound weird
It doesn't at
or
all.
rude. I really do believe, like, when, especially through grief, like that is such a debilitating
Oh.
energetic state to be in. It can be. But it can also really plant roots of the person that you are, and help you blossom and remind you of like what you are here to do, and to be and exist as a human, and that person, that thing, that energy that you still have a deep love and attachment for is still there, just maybe in a different sense than the what you had previous experience with before.
100%. And I'll share, like, I've gotten this question before, of like, hey, you believe in God, but like how, the classic, like, how could God do that, or let something
Yes.
like that happen? And I feel very sure of this, in this, that I don't, like, God didn't say, I'm gonna have your dad commit
Yeah.
suicide. That
Right.
that I don't believe that to have been the plan, because ultimately God gives us free will. Like if I want to move my arm this way, I can. It's not like we're robots, right? It's not like we're just doing what we're told. We have free will. And that's something he wanted to bless us with. Um, Now, unfortunately, because of what Eve had to go do and eat the apple,
Damn
right?
it, Eve.
Like, damn it, we, sin became a thing, and evil and pain and all of those things happened. And so ultimately, like, God isn't going to stop you from doing something, harmful or what have you. And so in this case,
Right.
I don't believe that God caused that to happen. However, what I do believe is that God has been with me. He's never left
The whole
me and has
time.
been with me the whole time. And that because of that, this didn't ruin me. This didn't stop me. This was a catalyst for me to grow and evolve.
Hmm.
And I'm very grateful for that because this has fundamentally changed my life and who I am as a person.
Hmm.
And it has actually even further pushed me into like my purpose and what I, do. So for just to speak to that, because I think that is a common question people wonder, like, how could God let something like this happen? And,
Mm.
we have free will. That's the, pro and con of free will.
Yeah.
So
You're making me emotional. Did you ever go on Kairos in high school?
I did. Yeah. It wasn't
Okay.
called Congress, but I went on a similar. Yes.
Okay. So for those listening, we went to the same high school, and as you get into your junior and senior year, they offer the opportunity to go away for a couple days or a weekend, and like it's a faith-based retreat, right? But fellow students are leaders on these retreats, and they give talks. And each talk is structured around a certain concept. And funny enough, so I went my junior year. It's so funny, like looking back and thinking about some of the things that like really weighed on my heart then, like, oh, nobody likes me, like whatever.
Yeah.
Those
Real.
concepts real, but like over like not being invited to this or you
Oh,
know what I mean? Like it's like,
yeah.
okay, whatever. And
Yeah.
and a lot of like my I would say trauma
Mhm.
happened during college, right? So like I lived I had a beautiful childhood. I had a really like great family growing up, and my family's still great in a lot of ways. Um but after I went, I led my senior year, and my talk that I gave, it's talk about like things being meant to be,
Yeah.
God, universe, whatever. I really wanted to be rector, and rector gives the last talk of the day or the last talk of the weekend or whenever you're there about like recapping all that you've learned and taking the flame with you and like lighting the way for others,
Yes. Yes.
and like bringing that like love back. And when I went my junior year, I was depressed. Like I didn't want to live anymore. Like I was struggling.
Oh
And I
my God.
can't pinpoint to a very specific moment or thing that made me feel that way. It was just like this hole. I was like a shell of a human almost.
Mhm.
But you go through the motions and we feed back into what we were talking about earlier around like, well, I'm a achieving student, like I play sports, I do all these amazing things, so therefore I should also add being a rector to my resume. And I didn't get selected. And instead, they gave me the talk called Search for God. And when I was writing it, like talking through these challenges that I was having, I did not tell my best friends in high school. Like I had a really hard time talking about it and feeling it. Like I was just so numb.
Yeah.
Um, and when I was writing it, my mentor, that was one of the teachers, he was my history teacher. He told me about a poem. I could like cry thinking about it. It's called Footprints in the Sand. Have you heard of it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. And oh my gosh. And it's like all about how, you think you're walking alone for so long. Like, you're like, when am I going to get out of this? When can I like stop feeling this way? Like, I want like to snap my fingers and it be done. And then you're walking on a beach and you're having all these questions of like, why am I going through this, whatever. And you're questioning like, why is nobody looking out for me? And then at the end of the poem, it talks about how I think it's like Jesus is like carrying you, and so the footprints in the sand are actually his. Oh my god, I could like
Oh, I
song
love
about it. It's such a like, while I don't necessarily like really associate myself with those beliefs anymore, like, oh god, it's just such a like a heavy feeling when you feel like you're by yourself and then you realize you're not. um and that's such like a sense of like relief, that anybody can resonate with, you know, whether it's physical people in your life, a mentor who means the world to you. Like, there are people carrying you through every single thing that you go through. And that's why we're here as humans. Like, we're here to connect and be together and like love each other. And so I just had to share that because that is just like the most beautiful poem. Makes me obviously cry.
I love that. I'm so glad you shared that. And I do think for anyone who's listening, you should absolutely go read that poem.
I'll link it in the show notes.
So
That shit makes everybody cry.
so, and it's so yeah, I did that. I think what you said is just beautiful, and I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Well, let's lighten it. And you know, I think we really clicked initially because we both have kind of that like, I don't want to say side hustle, because to both of us it's so much more than that. But from the outside looking in, right, like that's what it looks like and appears to be. And you have a beautiful little shop called Lolly and Lou. So I like, tell us all the things, where the inspo comes from, everything we need to know.
Oh my gosh, I love you. Yes. So Lolly and Lou. So this all started really after my wedding. So just a little bit of context. So I'll
Yeah.
set the stage. Lou, who's currently sleeping right now, I'll look to bring him in at the end for a little
You can send me a photo. I'll put him on our Instagram.
He's my star. So we got him. My dad got him when I was in high school, senior year of high school. He fit in the palm of my hand. He's a miniature dachshund, and his name is Louie. And we, he lived with my dad in Tucson. And even when I was like back, I was at college, I'd bring him to the Kappa house sometimes, and like he was just like, I just loved him. And our family, like, I grew up with labs and big dogs, but then as I like got into high school, it's a long story, but eventually our family transitioned into a dachshund family, and my dad had
Can't
dachshund.
go back.
You can't go back. And so and so after my dad passed away, like Louie was his sidekick, and everyone's like, well, where's Lou gonna go? And I'm like, well, I'm taking him, obviously. Like,
Right.
or and everyone was like, yeah, it needs, like, you're the best person for this. But also, and again, God bless Caitlin, my roommate, because he just as much became her dog.
So cute.
She was the best. She is the best to him. But so he came out to live with us, and sincerely, like, Louis is a gift to me from God, because he, like, I will get emotional thinking about it, and talking about it, but he has been with me through everything. And those moments when you are so sad and like the despair, like, it's not such a dramatic word, but it's truly
it's not though.
It's the only way to describe it. You just don't see a way through this. This is never going to get better. Like, he was with me, next to me the whole time. Like, he is a piece of my dad. He is my best friend, and he is with me through thick and thin, and he's always just been by my side. And similar to like things we've talked about where there's signs or whatnot, there's just things he does, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like this guy's a miracle dog. So fast forward to 2021, Matt and I are planning our wedding, and I work with my friend Kendall Yvonne, who's a fabulous artist. She's wonderful. So for anyone listening,
oh my gosh, yeah.
her up. I had her do my invitations. I was like, vision board. I have to have Kendall do my invitation. She does like beautiful custom artwork. I have to have Louis, you know, on the bar sign and all this stuff. And I just absolutely love going through the design process with her. So go get married. Yay. I'm sitting one day and I'm like, we need to put Louis, like this dog needs to be on things. Like I want Louis napkin, like after the wedding, like I want to bring the joy that he brings. I mean, this kid is a character and he is just like the best,
Mm-hmm.
sweetest little angel. He has gone through a lot himself. He had back surgery at the age of 8, paralyzed, couldn't walk, and now he is almost turning 13 in January 4th.
Oh my
And
God, little Capricorn king.
he's just a fighter. Um, and I was like, we have to bring, like, I have to bring him to others. Like, I want this to, you know, I want him to bring joy and smile and like make other people giggle. So I'm like, I'm gonna start a business, and I named it Lolly and Lou. Wanted him to be in the name. Lolly is actually what my Nunu calls me. No one else calls me that, and I didn't want to name the business after myself, but I want like it to be representative of like our
So cute.
partnership. So I'm like Lolly. That way, it's like it's not my name on the business.
Yeah.
And so actually, I as I start getting into it, I'm like, okay, I was gonna have Kendall do all of the artwork for me. But then you realize as a business owner that that is an expense. And when you're not creating any revenue, you like, I was at this place where I was like, okay, wait, we just had our wedding, like, or, I need to maybe like try to do this on my own. And so Kendall was fabulous, like, help me, like, just, I would ask her questions. And when I tell you some of those first drawings were rough, like my poor family, and like God bless my mom, who was always like, it's amazing, like you're doing great, and really meant it, like not just saying it. But I look at some of those and I'm like, the dog looked possessed. Like we should not be giving this to anyone. It's going to have a counteractive impact. But I just started working on it, and I would say over the past year, I've had the opportunity to do custom work for people. Now I actually did just one of my best friend's weddings, and did her. I drew her weenie dogs for her bar signs and her cocktail hour and all that good stuff. And I started creating cards. I've always loved creating cards. It's a way I love to spread love, and one of my love languages is gifting. Not just like, I mean, I love a good gift, but I love like curating the perfect thing for someone in a meaningful, thoughtful gift.
It's
like
the creative process.
Oh my gosh, it
Yeah.
gives me so much joy to see other people get joy from that. So I was like, you know what? I do love doing custom work, but I also want to, like, again, go back to my original idea of bringing Lou to everyone and making, I was like, how do we do that? Let's start with cards. I'm going to start there. I want to scale it. I want it to be a weenie empire one day. But yeah, that's where we're at today.
Amazing. I love it. And you just released your holiday collection, which I will be purchasing. The little Santa hat ones are so cute.
Yes, we're so excited with the holiday collection, and we're pumped for 2024. We've got quite a few things up our sleeve.
Ooh. Well, I can't wait to hear. We'll have to link up so we can explore. It's always so fun connecting with you too, like obviously outside of this podcast as well, because even we were texting earlier and you're like, we're too excited to just like, get on the podcast this evening and do all the things. But like I feel like it's so important, and I've learned the value of this year, of like finding people that really have, I don't want to say we have the same dreams, but we have similar ones,
Yes.
in the sense that we want to create something and grow something very personal and custom and on our own, outside of like kind of the structure that we've always been told to follow. And so it's just so cool to see you like doing that and actually having fun doing it. You know what I mean? Because I personally fall into the trap of like, oh God, okay, the recording was so fun, but now I got to edit. Now I got to like make the reel. Like it can become a chore so quickly, especially when you try to like monetize things and like grow a business. And so it's constantly this like testing of your own connection and mindset to it. And you're just such a like inspiration for me for that. Cause like if anything, you just love your dog so freaking much and it brings so much inspiration and I freaking love that.
Thank you so much. And I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, there is a lot, like, I don't like about business, like bookkeeping and
Oh,
tax. Like, oh my gosh. Like, that has been a journey for me and I've learned a lot. But through that, you're like, okay, the thing, I think that's important though, because you learn like the thing that you don't, that you want to do the least or that's the hardest. Once you get it, you're like, okay, hell yeah, like next challenge, like let's go. And it will be something else, you know, it will never get easy. And I think that's the thing I do love about just having your own business. It's like, it is what you put into it, right? And it
yeah.
can be as big as you want it to be. Um, and
The
it can
limit does
also,
not exist.
and also that being said, you can slow down or speed up at different times. It
Yes.
doesn't have to be full send 100% of the time, you know, but I appreciate that. And I also admire, I mean, to be fair, I think your time to launch was half that of mine because you got, like, you put yourself out there and that is scary. Like when you're a creator, it's scary to put yourself out there,
Yeah.
but you do it and it's amazing.
You just got to get over the hemming and hawing and find some balance. You know, it's not a hobby to me. It's actually something very serious, and you can view it as a hobby all you want. But like, this is real life. This is a dream that like we are here to create. So I love that. Yeah. Okay, I have a few questions for you. I like to rapid fire with my guests a little bit at the end. Um, why is spiritual connection important?
Give it's something bigger than you. It's purpose and what pulls you through the inevitably low and difficult times of life, and I think makes the bright points that much brighter.
Love that. Joy, joy, joy.
Joy.
What would you say to those who might be looking to deepen their spiritual practices or get started in a different way than they have in the past?
Yeah, I go back to what I said of like it's not an all or nothing mindset.
Mm,
It's truly one day at a time, small action, and be curious. Like go and don't be afraid to go try out things. And kind of like I tell people this like with therapy, and if people are interested in going back to church or what have you, just like if people go to therapist, the first
mm,
one may not be it for you. Matt and I accidentally walked into like no shade, but an evangelical fire and brimstone situation. And we both were like, and I was like, Matt, let's go to church. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the first thing I bring him to. We had to leave. It was like not good. It was not, but it's like,
yeah.
don't let that be, again, like we said, don't paint it with a broad stroke of like, well, religion's not for me or you know, give it,
Hmm.
just keep being curious, keep going and until it feels right, until it fits.
Yeah.
And furthermore, for me, ask God for guidance. Like
Yeah.
will direct you in the right direction for you.
I love that. And I feel like, we never stop questioning, but like I'm a big believer in intuition and that guidance coming through in multiple forms. But it's kind of like when you know.
That's
Like
right.
it's like I've arrived or like I get this now. I was
Yeah,
searching for that and I found it. And it usually turns up in the places you don't quite know exist or expect.
that's exactly. I love
Yeah.
that.
What's a book or resource? We talked about a few things, but if you have any additional ones for listeners to learn about anything we discussed today, you said Option B was a great book.
Yep. Option
Mm-hmm.
B is fabulous. For those that are going through the loss of a loved one, through suicide, there's actually a fabulous book called Life After Suicide. Um,
Mm,
really, I mean, I cried my way through it, but it was incredibly helpful.
yeah,
Um, there is another one called I'm we may need to double check this afterwards for show notes, but
we
um,
can.
Jesus is for real. Um, Very cool book. Very in short
For
read,
real, for real.
for real, short read, but meaningful. So
Yeah. Okay, awesome. I love that. We'll double check that and I'll link it there at the end. And then tell us about like some of the upcoming things. You have your holiday collection out. Anything else you want to share that like we should look for or where our listeners can find you?
Yes. Well, definitely find us on Instagram at shoplollyandlou.com. And you can find us at www.shoplollyandlou.com as well. And in terms of what we've got coming up, we have the holiday collection, continue to look actually for, I know no one's thinking about this right now, but we're going to have a Valentine's Day drop that I'm
Ah,
going to and then also I am available for custom work. I don't always do it, but if you are interested, you can always DM me at Shop Lolly and Lou, and I will certainly, we can work through and
love
brainstorm what
that.
it is you're looking for. But we're also coming out with a broader paper goods line later this next year. So think birthday cards, it's a boy, it's a girl, thank you cards,
Cute.
all the things you'll need. And, I think we all have had the experience where we realized right before an event, oh my gosh, you need a card, and you're writing it on the dashboard of the card. It's bumpy and it's a whole thing.
Who
What
got that video of me?
I know, spotted. We're here to make sure you can be proactive and that doesn't happen. So more to come there.
I love it. That is so exciting. I will be purchasing, and I know my mother will be too. She's a big stationery gal, as we are as well.
We sure are.
Yeah, cool. Well, thank you for just being so vulnerable today and sharing your heart. I know a lot of listeners will resonate with what you've had to say and in everything, right? From starting a business to moving through grief to loving your dog. So I'm just so grateful. Talk about cosmic connection or having somebody placed in your life. You reached out to me one day and was like, let's get coffee. And I was like, okay, I don't really know a lot about you, but I think you know everything about me. And I love that. So let's go. And we were at coffee for 2 or 3 hours, it felt like. And we could just talk forever. So I just so appreciate you seeing the best in everyone, no matter what their background is or where they come from, and just being such a loving and an open heart. I feel like we just need so many more Lauras in our world. So I love you and thank you. I appreciate
I
you.
love you. Thank you so much. That makes me cry, and I feel the same way about you. Obviously, because I was like, we gotta get coffee.
It was like, why are you so obsessed with
I
me?
know. That's not telling you're obsessed. I just knew I was like, I like this girl, the energy, we have to get together.
Yeah. No, and then after I was like, I'm gonna call my mom and tell I just made a new friend today.
So much.
I call her for everything. Poor Jennifer. She's like, I've had enough of you.
We love her. No, I bet
Yeah.
you she's like, not enough. Call me
Oh
more.
yeah. Yeah. I hope so. One day she'll say that for sure. Cool.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much, and I'll see you very soon. Yay.
Thank you. I love you.
Love you too. Bye.